I know I say this every time, but this is a big episode of the Shea Anything podcast. Jerry Blevins is joining us, not from the alternate site because he's at his home, but he's been at the alternate site. So we'll get his impressions of that, plus his impressions of spring training and what he saw from some of his teammates. We'll talk about it all on a big episode of the Shea Anything podcast. Starts right now. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's Doug Williams and Andy Martino with you as always. A reminder to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate it. We have Jerry Blevins with us, and if you're familiar with Baseball Night in New York, you've seen Jerry. If you've watched the Mets pregame show in the past, you've seen Jerry. If you've watched Mets games, you've seen Jerry. I'm sure you're all familiar with him, not just the pitcher, but the personality that comes with him. Jerry, we're so curious about a bunch of things. But how's the alternate site going? How are you and your family doing and adjusting to life in Brooklyn?
Good, man. Brooklyn's great. It's a little bit different. I imagine it's different kind of everywhere. This is our first time being here, during pandemic times. So the streets seem much emptier. Traffic is still not great, but much, much less. But it's nice, man. We love being in the city. We love being in New York. It's great seeing Mets hats around town and Brooklyn Dodgers stuff, and I got a Nathan's hot dog, so it's nice being in Brooklyn and being back.
Nice, yeah, the full experience. I love that. And I remember when I forgive me, but I think this was a tweet of yours when you decided to report to the alternate site that you were kind of, I'm putting words in your mouth, but like pleasantly surprised by how you felt going to spring training. You hadn't thrown as much as you probably normally would have. You show up and you pitch well, you feel good, and that's why you reported. So take us through from the time you reported to Port St. Lucie, how you felt about your arm and your stuff and compared to what you were expecting.
Yeah, I'll backtrack a little bit. We'll go before I reported my offseason, I ramped up my throwing because I had never taken this much time off from throwing or basically working out. So I threw a bunch. My arm felt great. My velocity was starting to come back to normal earlier than usual. So that's when I decided, hey, let's give this a shot. Reported to spring training and felt great throwing bullpens, seeing swings and misses when I faced live hitters. My body felt really good. I wasn't having, little nagging injuries as much as I thought I would at 37. Because you can't simulate standing around doing PFPs, running from field to field, being in cleats for hours at a time. You just can't simulate that in the off season, nor would you want to put your body through that. So I just wanted to make sure that I was there. And so I felt really good. My velocity, probably the best spring I've ever had, to be honest, because I knew I would have to compete for a spot versus getting ready for a season. So I came in a little bit ahead of schedule. There were some, setbacks from just not competing for over a year. And so it was shape of the curveball, reading swings, that kind of stuff. But I felt great. And so when I found out I wasn't going to make the team and I still felt really good, I figured I'd give myself at least another month to, make this big league team, see if I can make an impact because I still feel good. Reevaluating myself every day. I've got a game later today, inter squad at the Cyclones Park or MCU Park. And, every day is a new challenge. So I'm just being honest with myself, with my family, with the organization and taking it day by day.
Jerry, so that's the physical part of where you're at. I'm kind of interested in the mental and emotional part of you coming back too. I've been intrigued by this ever since you dropped that news that you signed, and we've talked about it a little on the air and off, and then intrigued doubly when you almost made the club, didn't, and then decided to stay. Sort of reminds me, I don't know if you've read Ball 4, but the last line in Ball 4 is that, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like you spend your whole life gripping a baseball and it turns out it was the other way around the whole time. So I'm wondering if you have felt that emotional pullback, you thought you might be done, and here you are back, and here you are deciding twice within the past couple of months to keep going. Maybe I'm overthinking it and it's as simple as, hey, let's see how this rides itself out. But have you felt that pull as a guy with other interests and other talents, is that pull toward the game, grinding it out at the alternate site when you could just be comfortably retired, has that been a stronger emotional pull than you might have expected?
Yeah, it has been. Emotionally, it's kind of, that I read Ball Four for the first time this offseason. We talked about it a little bit, you and I, Andy, but it really does have a grip on you. There's nothing like the camaraderie of the clubhouse, of guys that are going through the grind of a season together, the banter back and forth, the competitiveness. There's nothing like it. That's the one thing the guys that I've talked to that have retired or moved on, they miss the clubhouse the most. And so getting a taste of that in spring training, sparks that again. And so emotionally, it's definitely a drive. It's difficult being at the alternate site. It's hard to manufacture that same kind of want to be at the ballpark, because we're not. There's no fans. It's like extended spring training. We're not allowed to have anybody around. A lot of the times we're just facing the same guys over and over on your own team. So you got to kind of figure out where that drive comes from. And for me, and for everybody down there, it's wanting to help the team in Queens while we're in Brooklyn. And so every day you kind of have to put that yourself in that frame of mind to want to compete. And so that's where I'm at every day. As I get to the ballpark, I enjoy the banter. And when it's time for me to grip that baseball, it's to lock in and remember what you're doing.
How much do you feel like part of the Mets right now from that distance? Are you in touch with guys? I mean, I'm sure you have relationships and friendships on the big league side. Are you plugged in, texting, like watching every pitch when they actually are able to play a game? Are you watching?
Yeah, I am watching. I'm following along quite a bit. I don't text too much. The guys got a lot of stuff going on. They've got their own family and issues. Baseball's a weird time because you don't really have a ton of time to communicate back and forth. I'll send texts out back and forth, just mostly not to spark a conversation, but mostly to say, hey, that was a great job, or, keep your head up, that kind of stuff. But it is difficult being at the alternate site. You feel farther away than you actually are because we're working out at different times. The atmosphere is different. And so I give credit to the Mets organization for, basically what it feels like over there, because they're constant reminders that we're really close. Chad Kruger, Cat, our pitching guy, like everybody there is constantly reminding them, hey, we're just a phone call away. You're a rain delay, at a blister. You're right there. So remember every day to lock yourself in, because you're here to help the team in Queens. And so sometimes you feel far away. They do a good job of reminding you that we're there to help the big league club.
I have so many questions I could ask about your impressions of your teammates. The number one thing I'm interested in, though, Jerry, is because it had been some time since you had seen Jacob deGrom in person, and he just feels like such a story this year because the velocity is increasing. It's just mind-blowing what he's doing. So you show up in Port St. Lucie. I'm sure you watched him throw a bullpen in person, first time in a long time. Were you as blown away as we are watching from home at just how he seems to be improving with age moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, anytime I can watch him throw, he works really hard, but he also works really early. Like he gets to the park early. He's grinding before we get there, and so you got to kind of find out when he's throwing to really get a peek of it. And luckily, we have a relationship where I'd be like, all right, I'm not going to bother you. I'm going to let you do your work, but I'm just going to admire it, because this is the guy at the top of his game. This is a generational talent. You don't get to see this. And it's a shame that the season was shortened and no fans get to come to the ballpark, because I think Mets fans really understand what they have. You're seeing Mickey Mantle in his prime. You're seeing Mike Trout on the West Coast in his prime, Pujols in St. Louis. This is what we're getting. One of the greatest single players in a 4, 5, hopefully 6, 7 year span. We're getting to watch it. And it's a highlight of my career to just be on the same team in the same field, just like you said, Doug. To watch him work, it's on another level. I always laugh because we're doing the same job. I'm top 1%, and he's top. There's no one there, and it's amazing to me. I admire anybody that, whatever field of work that you do, dedicating yourself to that craft, whether it's being a great chef or a great host, a podcaster, a producer, basketball player, to see somebody be the pinnacle of that sport, I admire with the utmost respect. And to watch Jacob deGrom do it and do it for as long as he has at his age, it's special. And I think everybody kind of realizes it, but I just, I look to my teammates or young guys and like, hey, witness what's happening. You could do this someday, but understand that it's special.
I had this weekend, I was watching it with my dad, and I said out loud, I was like, it's going to be very cool one day to tell my kids that I've even interviewed him. Like, I had that moment where I was like, wow, he is a generational talent, to your point that, we're watching history take place. I think he's that great. All right. So moving past deGrom specifically, Jerry, was there anybody who, going through the rest of your teammates, pitchers, position players, whatever, anybody who's really surprised you, anybody who you didn't realize was that good and you showed up and watched like, wow, this is a player at a level that I didn't realize?
There was three that really stuck out to me just off the top of my head. One was watching Pete Alonso kind of bounce back. And it's a weird thing to say bounce back, because he had a rough 2020, but so many people did. It's such a strange season. It's hard to put a lot of weight on how much that counted, but you can see he dedicated himself, even rededicated himself. He looks like a different figure. He came in working hard, humble as normal, and he had a great spring, and he really pushed himself to do that. So watching Pete kind of take a level and a step forward of maturity was one. Number two was Dom Smith. I played with him when he was a really young top prospect. And I watched him go through what a young guy can go through, some struggles, what it takes to be at the big league level. You get there, and then once you're there, you're like, all right, that was my whole dream, was to get to the big league. Now what? Some guys have trouble reevaluating what it means to stay in the big leagues. And I think we saw him stumble through those a little bit, which is okay. I mean, that's what happens. That's why you have options. That's why you have team control. To watch him kind of blossom into the player that he is today, deserving of more playing time, of on most teams, he would be the starting first baseman because he's really good. But to watch him not let that affect him emotionally and just go out and help the team has been a revelation. And then the last one is Luis Guillorme. This guy is so talented defensively, and he takes such professional at-bats. The 20-plus pitch at-bat in spring training is kind of indicative. It was one of those, pop moments for everybody, but that's who he is. He's an amazing glove off the bench, can give you versatility, but he's also a pesky guy at the plate that'll surprise you. He's not gonna chase too many pitches. He's gonna battle. He's just a pro, and as pro as it gets, he can fit on any team and make any team better. He can have a career as long as he wants to play, as long as he keeps that glove around. And it's fun to watch that kind of guy grind it out, because I feel like I am the other side of that coin, of the pitcher version of a Luis Guillorme type, to kind of just do your craft. You don't get as much glory. Understandably, I'm not Jacob deGrom. He's not, Michael Conforto, Francisco Lindor, but he's a really damn good ball player.
Luis Guillorme, what intrigues me about him is he's the most catcher-looking infielder I've ever seen, especially for a slick field. He's got the catcher, the gross beard. Like, didn't Derek Norris used to have a beard? It just reminds me. I can see that behind the catcher's man. He's a little stocky for as slick as he is. So that's not a question; it's a comment. But I think he looks like a catcher, and it's always.
I thought you were going to say. So what do you think? I thought you were going to say. So what do you think about his figure?
That's anyway. Right. No, give me a physical assessment of how that catcher-looking guy can be a good short. No, I wanted to ask. You were on the inside of a clubhouse that no media was allowed into in spring training. It's a new team. You have obviously new superstar at shortstop, new GM, new everything, new owner, obviously. So if I was there, I would have been just looking for subtle signs of like, how does this feel different from the Mets vibe that I know, from the teams that I've covered. I mean, you could take that any direction you want, from chemistry among the players to anything, but did new Mets feel any different than old Mets in the first camp? You're in a cool position of having experienced both.
That's really a great question, because most people, you look for it. You look for the Mets dysfunction of the past, little cracks in the armor, little subtle things. But like you said, this is a new regime. This is a new era of Mets baseball. And I was captivated and taken aback by kind of the overall structure. To do things on a new basis, just in general, is difficult to establish yourself. And then under all these protocols where they just have it together and they're willing to open eyes and ears and doors to each other, to where there's just much more collaboration between departments. It just feels like everybody's pointed in a proper direction. Whether or not there's agreements and disagreements, there's going to be, because you have a lot of people, but everything's pointed in one direction. And that's awesome to see. That's what makes a really good organization. In baseball, you think about it as like the big league team, but if you look at it, you're like building a college program. You're building a program from the bottom to the top. And it feels like everybody is in step, pointing in the right direction, from, the Dominican to spring training to all the facilities. Everybody's lining up and moving in a positive direction. It's really exciting to be around. It's very positive for a Mets fan. And it's something that I love to be a part of. And it's exciting and truly should be inspiring for Mets fans looking forward.
And then with Lindor coming in, how we've heard all the stories about how positive and intense he can be. And there was the thing that kind of got out where he was getting on guys a little in a cutoff drill that had gotten a little sloppy. But just wondering, is what you saw consistent with the kind of the way we all understand Lindor's impact? Did you feel and experience that too, and how he might have impacted the way the group got related to each other and worked?
Yeah, absolutely. I hate to compare him to David Wright, but I want to compare him just on a level of how he works. David was there doing early work. He's the hardest worker. He's the most talented. He's the most visible player, but he's also putting in the work. And so there's a level of the respect there that you see a guy of that talent just work that hard. And then when you're in a drill and he tells you like, hey, you need to be here. Perfect. Exactly. You're going to take that for what it is. You're going to listen to a guy that knows what he's doing, is the best at it, and is willing to talk, because not everybody is willing to be a verbal leader. I saw it in David. You see it in Francisco Lindor, and that's key because he's in that position. There was we did a drill where all the pitchers are there, and we're talking about holding runners on second base, and we're looking at different signs for different pickoff moves. And they asked me what I thought, and Francisco was standing there, and I was like, look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at Francisco Lindor, and he's going to tell me what to do. When there's a runner on second base, I have to focus on the hitter. That's my job. If I can trust a great player like Francisco Lindor to be like, hey, look at me. If he's fine, I'll tell you to pitch. If not, we're going to pick. So I pay attention to him because I know he's doing his job that allows me to do my job. It's just a responsibility thing. He's a great player. He puts in his work. He cares about everything that's going on in the game, and it just takes so much pressure off of everybody else.
A real quick follow. Does he, out of curiosity, when you're going to throw over you're watching, does an infielder have a sign for that, or are you just watching to see if he's running over there? There's like pre-pitch tells that where we put on a sign. There are signs like that, but there's also in-game. And so I'll look at a runner, but mostly like at first base, I'm looking right at the runner. I'm making that decision. I'm reading it. They can call a pick from the catcher, from the coach's staff, but mostly it's on me. At second base, it's either pre or I like I said, I just put all that responsibility on Francisco Lindor. My job is to look at Francisco. He'll tell me if we need to pay attention a little bit more to this guy, and then I go home. And so it's more of a visual and verbal cue.
It's so interesting to hear that and the Lindor stuff. And I thought Andy's question was kind of perfectly put, because we know of Lindor from the outside, and he's got this kind of general reputation, Mr. Smile, vocal leader. But talking to somebody who's played on the field and had those kind of verbal and nonverbal communications with him, is really interesting. We have this thing we do on the podcast called the 3-batter rule, where we just kind of go through, which, sorry if it's a sore subject for you, Jerry, but we just go through 3 straight
all
questions.
the people that exposed the 3-batter rule. Jerry Blevins. So sorry.
It feels very personal.
Yeah, it's very personal. So I want to skip, this is for Jeff and Andy, I want to skip the talking smack to visiting relievers one. Okay. I'm going to get to the, let's do the instant replay one third. But this is just because I'm curious, Jerry. Do you have is there any communication to you about how close you are to getting the call? Because you mentioned earlier that you're a blister away. But do you know, like, who would have to go down for you to get the call? Do you know what they view the bullpen to look like, if they would ever go with 2 lefties? What do you know?
I know what I want to know. So there's a level of respect that they give me from front office and coaching staff to me. If I ask a question directly, I'll get a direct answer, and I appreciate that. It's I don't know the exact ramifications on who would go down in what scenario, because baseball is constantly evolving from a rain out to, depending on, the effectiveness our 7, 8, 9 guys, how they're doing affects what the rest of the guys do. There's just so many moving parts that I don't even want to speculate, because there's the old fashioned saying of control the controllables. There's only so much that you can do. I can make myself ready. I know that I am on the verge. There's other moving parts as well. But if they told me that I have no shot, I would be willing to accept that and, hang them up, move on. I still feel like I can contribute at that level. And if things work out, great. If they don't, great, And so I'm just doing my day-to-day from here, and then as things evolve, they'll talk to me and be forthcoming, and we'll evaluate each day and every day.
I think they could use 2 lefties. That's just my opinion, but I'll tell Sandy and Steve Cohn that's how I feel. Okay, let's move to instant replay. This is more of a general baseball conversation. Jerry, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but all of Major League Baseball Twitter is just freaking out about instant replay since the Conforto thing, since the Phillies-Braves game last night. We've had a couple really notable Sunday night games, which is interesting and I think very good for baseball. But last night's d'Arnaud's at the plate. He does a really good job blocking the plate. It's called safe. The Conforto instant replay, I'm not really sure if that's a replay conversation or just a bad call.
Well,
but
I think
anyway,
the conversation there could almost be like, shouldn't that be reviewable because it impacted the game?
Right. Yeah. But, yes.
Anyway.
But it was a strike anyway. So whatever. Jerry, do you as a player have a strong opinion on whether everything or nothing should be reviewable?
I don't think that everything should be reviewable. I just think the game, the pace of play, it's so slow when you review it because it's got to go elsewhere. They're waiting for the right angles to come in. So I think it just pace of play, it's slow. The Conforto, that's a judgment call. He made the wrong judgment, admittedly. It drives me crazy as a pitcher that has had this happen in the past, not to cost the game, but those are judgment calls and those are evolving. Umpires used to call balls and strikes differently, but now they're under different scrutiny. And so the game's evolving. The play at the plate, I don't know what needs to happen, but you got to get that call right. It was clearly wrong. I don't know what they saw. I would love an explanation. I think that's the next step, is a little bit of accountability on whoever made that decision, what they saw or what they didn't see. It's simple. If the NFL does that, they explain, call stands, call confirm, that kind of stuff. We need some type of aspect of that.
That's a great point. And, obviously, like, we're losing the colorful fun of some manager umpire arguments that you don't get because the decision's made off site. But like Brian Snicker, I think, made this point last night about how it's not explained. That is a weird gap in the process. It's like, I'm so mad and there's no one here to yell at. You can imagine how frustrating that would be. And I agree with you on the transparency. I've had players complain to me over the years about umpire transparency, rightfully so. even before all this, when it was like, yeah, you might be able to knock on the door and talk to the crew chief instead of the guy that blew the call, and players being like, well, why do I have to explain it when the umpire might not? And now there's a whole other level of that where it's these guys obviously doing the best they can in Chelsea, but not always having to explain themselves, even to the manager.
That's the thing, you saw Smith go out there and be like, I'm so angry. It reminded me of like, you have a bad time with your cable, and you call the customer helpline and you're getting a little upset and you're like, I am so sorry that I'm raising my voice at you because I know you have nothing to do with this, but I'm so angry that I just need to vocalize it to someone. That's what it reminded me. It's like, I'm sorry, but also what the etch, what's going on? I need to yell and I have nobody to direct that at. So I give him props for not, when replay first came in, the managers weren't even allowed to step on the field. As soon as they did, they got tossed. Like, you can't, what are you going to argue with me? But you got to let people speak their minds and speak emotionally. And accountability wise, why not have a guy step up and answer questions in front of the media? We have to. Why not them? They're on the field too. They impact the game just as much as we do sometimes. So stand in front of the mic and handle it. It's tough, especially in New York City. Sometimes you gotta say, I didn't do the right thing. I didn't do my job today, and wear it. Take it on the chin.
I'm picturing, I wonder how long it's going to be before, I'm picturing Terry Collins doing this, but I know he's not managing anymore, but somebody just saying, give me the headset, and yelling at the guys. Like, it'd be a great, it's like a 2021 version of like ripping the bases out. Like, it doesn't really make sense in a tirade, but it actually would be kind of cathartic.
That would work.
Yeah. That's coming. I can't wait. That's a great idea, Doug. I think you can get Louis to do that. Let him know next time. Be like, hey, I need to speak to someone. Just put the headset on and start yelling. That's great.
Please speak to your manager. Yeah.
Exactly. Let me speak to the manager. That would be really like hilariously out of character for Luis Rojas. Like,
I don't see him as the guy to pioneer
I'm sure he's gotten tossed, but I don't even remember if he got, like, what the circumstances were of him getting tossed last year. And that would be really funny. It would seem like someone told him to do it, which in this case would be true.
He seems to operate a remarkably consistent register, I have to say, as a compliment to him. I mean, I've never seen him particularly excited or angry, at least the public face he presents. So I guess that's what players like, right, Jerry? For the most part.
Yeah, exactly, man. He's our, that's what you want out of a captain, steering the ship. You want calm, cool, and collected, and he does that. He'll get excited when need be. But for the most part, you're going to get the same Louis every day, and that's all you can ask for.
It's like Terry, never too high, never too low.
Yeah, exactly. No jackpots or anything involved.
Although Rojas is not team skinny guy, unfortunately, Jerry. He's not built like we are. He's
too many push-ups.
The vaccine.
You're talking about the vaccine photo.
It was like this. Like, it was just a tribute to the guns of Luis Rojas.
If I had him, I'd show it off too. Instead, I just showed my sticker.
Yeah. Me too.
All right. So the last of the three batter rule, and Jeff, thanks for putting it this way, was doing Baseball Night New York so much fun that it motivated you to get back to playing as soon as possible. I'm going to take the sarcastic nature of that question and actually turn it into a question. You've done media, not just on our show. Is that in the back of your head kind of nice, knowing that, yes, you're trying to get back on a big league mound? That is goal number one. But you have something that you really enjoy that also has a little bit of that clubhouse atmosphere and can connect you to the game to look forward to once you're done.
Exactly, Doug. Like, that's exactly it. I really enjoyed working with SNY, working with you guys. It was really fun. It's a part of baseball. There's that camaraderie there. It's a part of the game. Like, you guys have a job to do that is important for baseball as playing. You guys promote our game. You guys give the fans something to talk about. It's part of it. It's part of the promotion. It's what makes playing in New York great. What makes it unique. Writers, anchors, TV, sports. There's just so many people, so many talking heads talking about it. To be on SNY where people are at the top of their game. You guys know what you're talking about. You're really good at your craft. Like I said earlier, I admire anybody that's willing to push themselves to be the best at what they do. And that's what you guys are here. It's just a different aspect of the sport. You know, you don't get to play it, or some of us used to play it, and now we're promoting it and doing our best to push the game forward in this direction. I think it's a vital part of the game of baseball. And I respect the hell out of the writers and the producers and the staff here that add to it. It's fun. It's hard. It's difficult. And you guys are great at it. So it's definitely a lot of fun. There is a fun clubhouse atmosphere and some banter that goes along with it. I really enjoy it. And I wouldn't call it a fallback per se, but it's definitely it's nice to know that I could do it if given the opportunity after baseball.
What I took away from that
is
that
hard.
I'm the Jacob deGrom of sports writers. That's
You are, Andy, or is that what you said? Oh, okay.
That's what I took, because you said you guys are, you know, that
Mhm.
trying to be the best in your craft. And when I hear you guys, I'm self-centered enough to think about what that just means for me. And
You're not the Luis Guillorme or the Jerry Blevins of SNY. You're the Jacob deGrom.
boy, now, to be fair, this is a very interesting question, though. Probably one that we can't answer spontaneously. It would take some thought. I think you have to put Gary, Keith, and Ron in the Jacob deGrom, Francisco Lindors of SNY. What am I? God, I don't want to know. I don't want. I'd have to think
that'll be a fun topic. I like doing that. Like, what would Jacob deGrom be if he were in football? So he's a pitcher. He would have to play defense, correct?
Right.
So he would have to be.
He could be a quarterback.
A quarterback? Don't you think that would be like a Lindor would be a quarterback because he puts points on the board?
You're thinking because he throws a ball dog? That's very simplistic.
I'm sorry. He's a shortstop, good athlete. He could be a dual threat.
He's a great. Let's just say.
How about a star cornerback if he's like a Richard Sherman in his prime?
100% like a shutdown cornerback, or would he be like a JJ Watt? You know, a guy that can just rush and change the course of the game, turn defense to offense with a pick six every once in a while. Who knows? I like doing that comparison. So if you guys want to put yourself in baseball shoes, I'd love to hear, at least off the air, who do you think your player comparison would be in your field?
I'm not athletic enough to make myself anything better than the quality control coach, but it shows I have a head on my shoulders.
Also really, really important.
There you go.
I think, maybe I'm like a Tomas Nido. Like because I've been a backup for like Gary Apple and for Steve Gelbs, and I'd like to think that when I fill those roles, you don't even really realize that the backup's doing it. That's what I like to think. Tomas Nido is a good player. He's a good defensive catcher. He can come in, do the job, and he can also occasionally do something that is unique to him. So
I like that.
That's
good.
That's the closest I could get to, Jerry.
I appreciate that. I also think Nido is an underappreciated player as far as his skill set goes. So I admire that. Thank you for putting that together. That was a good one, Doug.
That was a good one. That was quick.
I'm gonna tell my agent after this, like, I am an underappreciated player given the skill set that I have, like Tomas Nido. Says Boom. Jerry Blevins.
There it is.
Well, this has been
that note.
Yeah, this has been a blast, Jerry. We really appreciate it. We know you have a game to play, which I hope you can get in. It's a little bit rainy today, but thank you so much. I'm glad to hear you're doing well. I think I can speak for Andy. We're pumped that you stuck with it and that you're at the alternate site, because we get to not root for a blister, but that is a pretty harmless injury to root on somebody. So I don't feel terrible saying it, but we hope you get your shot. We know you deserve it. And I'm glad to hear that you've kind of pleasantly surprised yourself with how you felt. So we're rooting for you, and we really appreciate you coming on.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it, Jeff. You guys have a good one, and hopefully I can get to do this soon with you again.
Yeah, I think it'll happen again soon, my friend. So we appreciate it, and be well.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening, everybody, to the Shea Anything podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, weeknight, 6 o'clock, Baseball Night New York on SNY. We hope to see you there. We hope to see you every week, twice a week during the season on the Shea Anything podcast. Talk to you later.